In 2 days, Mr. Hind's family would hold a death anniversary ceremony. That evening, after dinner, he went to Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen's house to invite Mrs. Xuyen to a meal with his family. Upon arriving at Mr. Xuyen's house, Mr. Hind noticed the gate was closed. He called out, "Mr. Xuyen, are you home?" No one answered, but a strong, pervasive smell of blood assaulted his nostrils. He wondered if Mr. Xuyen had slaughtered another pig for sale, as the smell of blood hung heavy in the air. He walked around to the courtyard where Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen usually slaughtered pigs, but no one was there. The courtyard was clean, not a single fallen leaf, so where could a freshly slaughtered pig be, and where was this blood smell coming from? A flicker of unanswered questions crossed his mind. Mr. Hind called out a few more times, but still, no one replied. He returned to the front gate and pushed it open slightly, saying, "I'm coming in, Xuyen." The creaking sound of the door hinges was deafening. The stench of blood was even stronger now. The buzzing of flies, the eerie silence, and the pervasive smell of blood sent chills down Mr. Hind's spine. No one was home. A black cat suddenly darted out the door and let out a mournful meow. Mr. Hind flinched as he saw the cat dart out the main door. As it reached the threshold, it turned to look at him with frightened eyes before vanishing into the darkness. Mr. Hind turned back and slowly stepped further inside. Following the flickering light of an oil lamp from the slaughter room, he gently pushed the door open and entered. What he saw made him scream in utter horror. On the floor lay the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen, sprawled in a pool of fresh blood. Mrs. Xuyen had a very deep wound near her heart, bleeding profusely. This was likely the wound that had taken her life. In Mr. Xuyen's chest, the same curved knife he usually used for slaughter was still embedded. Beside their bodies lay a ceramic jar, broken in two. Seeing this gruesome sight, Mr. Hind vomited uncontrollably, throwing up the entire bowl of rice he had eaten earlier that evening. Panicked, hands trembling, not knowing what to do, Mr. Hind suddenly caught sight of a dark shadow darting past the window. He thought to himself, could it be a thief? Losing all composure, he ran after it. But when he reached the spot, guided by the bright moonlight, Mr. Hind was utterly astonished and exclaimed, "Why are there no footprints?" He had clearly seen someone's shadow just moments ago. It had been raining heavily for days, only stopping that evening. The garden soil was still muddy and soft from being soaked for so long. Therefore, anyone running through here would surely leave footprints in the muddy ground. Yet strangely, the soil remained undisturbed, as if the shadow he had seen earlier hadn't touched the earth. And if there were no footprints, it could only mean. At this thought, Mr. Hind shivered and whispered, "It couldn't be a ghost." Trembling, he backed away from Mr. Xuyen's courtyard, no longer daring to step inside. He hurried out to the alley and shouted for help, alerting the villagers that there were dead people. In Hung Dao village, everyone admired Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen. They were pig slaughterers, but their business used to be terrible. Sometimes, Mr. Xuyen even had to bring unsold meat home for his family to eat so it wouldn't spoil. But for some unknown reason, in the past few years, their butcher stall had become incredibly popular. Some days, they would slaughter 2 or 3 pigs and sell all the meat. Every household in the village that wanted to buy meat would go to their place. Even people from the neighboring and key village would come to buy from them. With everyone buying a few kilograms, sometimes Mr. Xuyen would sell out a large pig early in the morning. People rumored that Mr. Xuyen's pigs yielded very lean, delicious meat, not fatty like many other vendors. Because business was booming, their family's life steadily improved. Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen had 2 children. Their eldest son, Truong, was over 20 and worked as a carpenter in a key village, commuting daily. Their youngest daughter, Xuyen, was studying in the provincial town and only returned home once a month. Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen had been selling pork for over 10 years, but before that, people were too poor to even afford enough rice, let alone pork. Moreover, for some inexplicable reason, even when Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen set up their stall like others, they sold absolutely nothing. Next to Mr. Xuyen's stall was Mr. Tone's. In those days, most villagers bought meat from Mr. Tone because he sold it a few how asterisk cheaper than Mr. Xuyen. Later, Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen matched Mr. Tone's prices but still couldn't sell anything. Their family faced difficulties from all sides, especially with Truong soon reaching college age. Seeing his parents' struggling business and his younger sister, Xuyen, growing up, Truong told his parents, "Maybe I should drop out of school. I can work as a carpenter in a key village and earn more money to support Xuyen's studies. I'm a boy, I can endure any hardship, but Hyen is a girl, it would be too hard for her to drop out of school. Mr. Xuyen felt sorry for his son's sacrifice. He insisted, no, we'll figure something out. We can't bear to let either of you drop out. Truong immediately continued, how can you figure it out, Dad? By relying solely on pig sales. Don't think I don't know how much pig debt you've accumulated in recent days. At this, Mrs. Xuyen sadly wiped away tears welling in her eyes. She sighed heavily and said, what he says isn't wrong, dear. We don't have any money left. Trying to keep Hyen in school is already beyond our means. Hearing his wife, Mr. Xuyen sighed in despair. He felt useless, causing his children to suffer alongside him. But at that moment, he couldn't think of a better solution. So, he had to let Truong work to contribute to the family's finances. In the first days of Truong's apprenticeship at Old Man Tu's carpentry workshop, Old Man Tu was very good to him, understanding Truong's circumstances, and paid him a small amount as an assistant's wage. This way, Mr. Xuyen's family could afford a few more meals a day, and Hyen wouldn't have to drop out of school. Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen continued their slow business days. Mrs. Xuyen eventually said to her husband, maybe we should stop selling meat, dear. At this rate, we'll end up deep in debt. Where will we get money to cover the losses indefinitely? Mr. Xuyen pondered something deeply, then leaned close to his wife. I heard people from Enki village next door say Old Man Tone used black magic to make his business boom like that. What are you thinking? She immediately interjected. Keep your voice down. What if someone hears? He then whispered something into his wife's ear. Mrs. Xuyen's face instantly lit up with a happy smile. The next day, people no longer saw Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen's meat stall. That day, Mr. Tone sold out a full stall of meat even though it was still early. But perhaps that was the last time Mr. Tone would sell so much. After that, Mr. Tone's business went through a long period of slowness, just like Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen's had. However, since Mr. Xuyen's family took a day off from selling and then returned, their business boomed. People rumored that Mr. Xuyen had stolen Mr. Tone's good fortune in business, or that Mr. Tone's black magic no longer worked for him. In reality, Mr. Tone knew nothing about raising charms. He sold well because he was good at finding pigs that yielded very fresh and delicious meat. Once customers experienced the quality, they would return, and gradually it became a habit. There was no magic charm helping him sell so much. Furthermore, Mr. Tone's honest and simple nature earned him a lot of trust from the villagers. Mr. Xuyen, on the other hand, was perceived by villagers as somewhat cunning and deceitful. For instance, one time a villager bought a kilogram of meat from him, but upon weighing it at home, it was only 9 lang. When confronted, Mr. Xuyen not only refused to compensate but also berated the person, accusing them of greed and implying they had cut off a portion after taking it home, knowing no one would know. Without proof, the villager had no choice but to accept it and leave. On that day off, Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen traveled to a village quite far from Hung Dao village. They sought out a renowned shaman to ask for instructions on how to raise a fortune-bringing charm. The old shaman looked at Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen and asked, "You want to ask for a charm?" Mr. Xuyen nodded repeatedly and pleaded, "Our family has been facing hardship for years. Business has been stagnant for many days. If this continues, we're afraid we'll be deep in debt and won't even have enough to eat, Master. Please have mercy and help us." The old shaman, eyes half closed, nodded, his voice hoarse. "If you want to be rich, it's easy. Just do it." Hearing this, Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen understood his meaning and presented a wad of cash carefully wrapped in a plastic bag. This was all the money Mr. Xuyen had managed to save, and he handed it all to the old shaman. The shaman took the money, put it in his pocket, and stood up, walking inside. From there, an eerie red light emanated, looking very frightening. Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen dared not approach, sitting quietly outside, waiting. A moment later, the shaman emerged, holding a ceramic jar. He looked at Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen and said, "Inside here is the centipede that I have meticulously prepared. Take it home and raise it. Each day, drop a single drop of pig's blood into it. Raise it for 100 days until it dies and turns into a white-blue smoke. Then, seal the jar tightly. The spirit will only circulate inside the jar and not escape. You just need to place this ceramic jar directly under your meat stall every day, and that day's business will boom. At the end of the day, bring it back and store it securely in your room. It's best not to let anyone else know about you raising the charm. Only then can it truly help you become wealthy. Are you sure you want to raise it?" The shaman seemed about to say more, but then hesitated and stopped. Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen, hearing the old shaman, felt that raising the charm was incredibly simple, and since it would help them earn a lot of money, they had nothing to fear. Mr. Xuyen nodded vigorously in agreement. Mrs. Xuyen thanked the shaman profusely. After bidding the old shaman farewell, the couple headed home with the ceramic jar, their hearts overflowing with anticipation of getting rich soon by raising this centipede charm. After Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen had gone far out of sight, the old shaman turned back inside. He let out a sigh, thinking to himself, "Fortune and misfortune are self-inflicted, one cannot escape them." He then touched the wad of money Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen had given him earlier. A wide, ear-to-ear grin spread across his face, pleased that his wallet grew thick. In truth, he never wanted to engage in such inherently dangerous work, but he needed the money to treat his son's illness. His son, only 10 years old, suffered from a strange disease. He had taken his son everywhere with him, trying to earn money for his treatment. As a shaman, he knew full well whether raising a charm was good or bad. If the magical power of the charm raiser was strong enough, they could control it, preventing it from turning into a demon and harming people. However, if it was an ordinary person or a shaman with weak magical power, they would be unable to do so. At that point, it would be very dangerous for those who raised them. They might even lose their lives. Earlier, the shaman had wanted to warn Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen about this, but then he thought he might lose the entire payment, so he remained silent. He could only secretly hope that nothing untoward would happen to Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen. From that day on, people noticed Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen looking noticeably livelier and happier, as their pig meat sold better than before. Those who had previously complained about his high prices now suddenly switched to buying from his family. Some even bought 2 or 3 kilograms of meat at once, an amount not even Mr. Tone's stall had sold previously. With this turn of events, the couple believed even more strongly that raising the fortune-bringing charm had worked. Each day, after slaughtering and preparing the meat, Mr. Xuyen would let his wife go to the market to sell it. Meanwhile, he would carry the ceramic jar containing the centipede, nourished by pig's blood, within. Mr. Xuyen beamed with joy as he leaned close to his wife's ear and whispered, "Today we sold more meat than ever before." Mrs. Xuyen, hearing this, was no less delighted. The two of them dreamed of a day when they could sell 2 or 3 whole pigs. Then they would have money to pay off their debts and even be able to let their daughter, Xuyen, continue her studies in the provincial town. Xuyen was very smart. If she had to drop out of school to get married like many other girls in the village, it would be a great disadvantage for her. Their daughter deserved to get a good education, marry a wealthy man, and live a life of luxury. Gradually, Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen earned enough money to pay off all their debts. Their home acquired more modern appliances. One day, Mr. Xuyen brought home a new model television, making everyone in the village look on with envious admiration. He remembered how, in the past, whenever there was a gathering, he had to go to a neighbor's house to watch TV. If they were happy, they'd open the gate. If not, they'd close it and watch among themselves, leaving him disheartened to return home. Now he had money to buy his own television, no longer having to bow his head to anyone. Seeing her husband bring the TV home, Mrs. Xuyen smiled joyfully and said, "From now on, I can freely watch TV dramas. Before, when we watched at Mrs. Ka's house, she'd grunt and complain loudly about any show she didn't like." Mr. Xuyen nodded at his wife. "That's right. Now we can watch whatever we like, no need to rely on anyone." Life in their home gradually improved, and business became increasingly smooth. Before, Mr. Xuyen sometimes struggled to sell even one slaughtered pig. Now, he had to slaughter 2 or 3 to meet the demand from villagers. Not only people from Hung Dao village, but also many from Enki village came to buy meat from his family. More than 3 months had passed, and the centipede in the ceramic jar had died, leaving only a white-blue smoke inside. The first day after the centipede died, Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen fell into a peaceful sleep. Suddenly, a deep, drawn-out voice echoed near his ear, "I am hungry. Come here quickly and give me food." At first, Mr. Xuyen thought he was dreaming, but no, it wasn't a dream. The voice was coming from very close by, right inside his room. Listening carefully, Mr. Xuyen realized the voice was emanating from the ceramic jar where the centipede charm was kept. He panicked and frantically slapped his wife's body, waking her up. Mrs. Xuyen grumbled sleepily, "What is it, old man? Can't you let me sleep in peace at this hour?" Mr. Xuyen frantically slapped his wife's body a few more times. Wake up quickly, something is making sounds in that jar. Mrs. Xuyen rubbed her eyes, slowly sat up, let out a long yawn, and asked, "What's in the jar?" "A voice is coming from the jar," Mr. Xuyen said. Mrs. Xuyen angrily nudged her husband's arm. "Are you crazy? The tiny jar is still there, untouched, yet it's speaking." At that moment, the same voice Mr. Xuyen had heard earlier echoed from the ceramic jar again. "I am hungry, bring me food quickly." Now both husband and wife jumped, recoiling deeper into the bed, fixating their gaze on the jar placed on the cabinet shelf. Mrs. Xuyen tremblingly whispered, "W, what is that?" Before Mr. Xuyen could reply, the voice from the ceramic jar rang out once more. "I am your master, I brought you wealth, and now you don't even recognize me." Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen exchanged glances, then exclaimed, "The centipede charm." Yes, it is I." Mr. Xuyen's mouth hung open in surprise. Before going to the shaman to ask for the charm, he hadn't heard the shaman say anything about what would happen after the centipede died. Now, hearing the sound coming from the ceramic jar he had brought home, he felt a chill of fear. "W, what are you?" "I am the centipede charm, raised by my master for 100 days. Currently, I don't yet have enough strength to fully manifest. I am merely a wisp of smoke. All my master needs to do is give me a drop of human blood every day. Then I will gain more power and be able to help my master earn a lot of money." Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen went from one surprise to another, but hearing about earning a lot of money, Mr. Xuyen felt a hint of curiosity. "Is it true that just one drop of my blood every day can help me become rich?" "Yes." Mr. Xuyen turned to look at his wife, seeking her opinion. Mrs. Xuyen nodded. And so, from that day on, every night, Mr. Xuyen would prick his finger and let a drop of his own blood fall into the ceramic jar. At the same time, his pig business boomed incessantly. He had to buy pigs from neighboring villages because the local supply wasn't enough to stock his slaughterhouse. Many times, Mr. Xuyen told Truong, "Why don't you stay home and help your parents sell meat instead of working as a carpenter, which doesn't pay much?" Hearing his father, Truong shook his head and refused. Old Man too had been very kind to him when he took him in. Now the old man had no assistant, and there was a lot of work at the workshop. If Truong quit now, it would be like betraying his benefactor. He replied to his father, "Let's wait a while longer, until Old Man too finds a replacement, then we'll see." Mr. Xuyen didn't force his son anymore. He knew Truong valued loyalty and kindness, unlike his own cold nature. Well, this trait might cause him to suffer a bit financially, but it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. As parents, all they wanted was for their children to have a better life, free from hardship. They didn't want to interfere too much with what their children did or studied. Hyen was now a first-year college student. At the end of the month, she returned home to visit and was overjoyed to see the new TV. "Mom and Dad bought a TV? Oh, not just a TV. Later, we'll buy motorcycles for both of you so you can travel conveniently." "Really, Dad?" "Really, why not?" The whole family gathered around the dinner table, enjoying the joyful and warm atmosphere. No one knew that disaster was about to strike every member of that household. In Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen's bedroom, a demonic entity grew, gradually strengthening as it was nourished by human blood. In the following days, money flowed in more and more, making Mr. Xuyen incredibly joyful. At the same time, the centipede charm demanded more blood from him. Blinded by money, Mr. Xuyen could no longer distinguish right from wrong. Every night, he secretly dropped countless drops of fresh blood into the ceramic jar without his wife knowing. One time, Mrs. Xuyen noticed a deep wound on her husband's wrist. Worried, she asked, "What happened to your hand?" Mr. Xuyen quickly tried to hide his flustered expression. "Oh, I was slaughtering a large pig, and I accidentally cut myself." Mrs. Xuyen, hearing this, only reminded her husband to be careful and went about her work. Since her family's fortune had risen, she also started to dress up more. One day, she sold meat early, so she gathered a few of her friends to go watch a traditional play in Inki village. Seeing her dressed up, Mrs. Xuyen told her husband, "I'll be home late tonight, okay? Don't wait for me in Truong to eat dinner." Mr. Xuyen nodded, indicating he understood. He continued to watch the football match on their large television. In this village, hardly anyone dared to buy such an expensive TV. Just thinking about it thrilled Mr. Xuyen to the core. It was true that having money made a difference. No one could look down on him anymore. On the contrary, many people sought his favor and help. Mr. Xuyen was also planning to buy a motorcycle for both his son and daughter for easier travel. He even planned that if he saved enough money next time, he would demolish this house and rebuild it into a grander one. Then, he would invite his parents to live with them and enjoy the prosperity. The rush of newfound prosperity prevented Mr. Xuyen from noticing the changes in his health. His skin became paler, and his heart beat faster, making him feel a bit short of breath. He simply thought it was due to being busy with business and overworking, which had caused his health to decline. He decided that next time he would visit the herbalist to get some tonic herbs to drink. Before he could do anything, a major incident occurred. That evening, on his way home from work, Truong got into an accident and broke his leg. That night, after finishing delivering a batch of goods to a customer, Old Man 2 coaxed him into a few drinks. Truong usually had a very low alcohol tolerance, so Old Man 2 never forced him to drink much. But for some reason, Truong felt happy that day and drank several glasses. Seeing him slightly tipsy, Old Man 2 suggested, "Why don't you stay here for the night? It's not safe to go home alone when it's pitch dark." Truong waved his hand and shook his head, saying, "It's just a short distance. I'll be home in a little while." So, Old Man 2 didn't press him to stay. Indeed, the distance from Old Man 2's house to Truong's wasn't too far, but the dirt road was winding, narrow, and difficult. As he rode past a short stretch of road, there was a brightly lit electricity pole by the roadside. The alcohol must have impaired Truong's judgment. As he rode close to the electricity pole, a dark shadow suddenly appeared before him. Startled, he quickly swerved to avoid the shadow, but Truong crashed straight into the electricity pole and fell to the ground. The motorcycle pinned his leg, causing him sharp pain. Nearby villagers heard Truong's cries and rushed out to see what happened. After calling for help, people took him to the clinic. Truong's leg was broken and plastered up to the knee, and his whole body was covered in scratches and wounds. Blood stained his clothes. Mr. Xuyen's neighbor, who had just returned from the clinic, ran to inform him, so Mr. Xuyen anxiously rushed to see how his son was. Seeing Truong covered in blood, Mr. Xuyen anxiously asked, "What happened to you?" The nurse replied, "Drunk driving." Mr. Xuyen was somewhat surprised because his son rarely touched alcohol. However, as Truong was still in pain, he didn't press for details. A few days later, a neighbor passing by the clinic told Mrs. Xuyen, who was watching a play, "Mrs. Xuyen, shouldn't you go home and check on your son? Truong is covered in blood and your husband also rushed there, so why are you still watching the play?" Mrs. Xuyen was surprised. "What happened to him?" The woman replied, "I just came from the clinic. Truong is all bloody and your husband rushed there too, so why are you still here?" Hearing this, Mrs. Xuyen didn't even bother to greet her neighbor, frantically grabbed her clothes and rushed straight to the clinic. Upon arrival, she saw her son's leg in a cast, and he was covered in blood. Mrs. Xuyen cried out in panic, "Oh my God, what happened, my son?" Mr. Xuyen replied to his son, "He crashed his motorbike into an electricity pole and broke his leg." After the doctors cleaned his wounds and cast his leg, Truong was brought home by his parents. The doctor instructed him to return in a month to remove the cast. The motorbike was also towed back to Mr. Xuyen's courtyard by villagers. The bike was quite scratched and damaged, but Mr. Xuyen didn't pay it much mind, only concerned about his son's leg, which was now plastered up to the knee. Mr. Xuyen was about to ask his son if he was in much discomfort. Truong, by now, had sobered up somewhat. The throbbing pain in his leg made him grimace slightly. Just then, he finally spoke. "Why did I drink so much wine today?" Truong recounted the story of drinking with Old Man 2 that afternoon and also seeing the shadow in front of him that caused him to swerve and crash into the pole. Mr. Xuyen then asked, "So who was that person?" Truong shook his head, indicating he didn't know because after he fell, people immediately took him to the clinic. So he couldn't tell if the dark shadow he saw was someone from Enki village. It could also have been someone from Hung Dao village passing by. In the following days, because of his painful leg, Truong stayed home from work. Mr. and Mrs. Xuyen still went to the market to sell meat, as taking a break would mean losing customers. Mrs. Xuyen woke up earlier than usual to cook breakfast for him before she and her husband left. Truong, with his injured leg, couldn't do anything. After hearing his parents' instructions, he intended to pull the blanket over himself and go back to sleep. But it was raining, and the cold wind blew in through the window. Though still half asleep, Truong forced himself to get up and close it. He looked out at the courtyard gate where his parents were selling meat. Next to them, there was another shadow. Truong wondered who it could be. But when he looked again, his parents had already gone out of sight, and the other person was nowhere to be seen. He lay back down, pulled the blanket up, and slept soundly until noon, skipping breakfast. By this time, his parents had probably returned. Truong heard faint noises from Mr. and Mrs. Zion's room. Truong limped out on his broken leg and called out, "Dad, Mom, are you back?" Mr. and Mrs. Zion, hearing their son's voice, hurriedly ran back from the backyard. Mrs. Zion quickly followed, and seeing Truong, she was about to ask, "What's